Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the third and final day of Showrunners of Futurity, organized by IEEE APSIT Power and Energy Society in, in association with IIC EPSIT. It's been an exciting 3 days, and we at IEEE APSIT PES Chapter would like to thank all of you who have stuck with us for these 3 days. Moving on, today we have with us a very special guest joining in all the way from UAE, Dr. Ahmed Bader. Ahmed sir is the current managing director and co-founder of Insyab Wireless UAE, an entrepreneurial technologist. He has more than 17 years of experience in the field of wireless connectivity, autonomous systems, and data analysis. Ahmed sir is also the founder of Shifa Healthcare Program, a program which offers its services primarily to the impoverished and underprivileged people of refugee camps in Jordan. So, without further ado, let's hear from Dr. Ahmed Badr. Sir, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Mukul. Thanks a lot for the introduction. It's really a pleasure to be with you and the audience today. I hope you can all hear me well and also see the screen. I would like to, first of all, to commend Mukul and his colleagues again for inviting me. They crossed demographic and geographic boundaries to reach out to me and identify me as a potential speaker for this webinar series. And I hope I will present something to you today that will motivate you, give you some food for thought, and hopefully add to your knowledge and expectations about what entrepreneurship is all about. I would probably spend the next 20 to 25 minutes speaking, or 30 minutes, let's say, max. But then I would be really happy to open the floor for questions, for comments with the audience. I know it's probably getting late at your end, let me try to actually motivate you and also provide you with an enjoyable discussion. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Jordanian. I'm 40 years old. I'm married with 3 daughters. And that's important, by the way, because once you get married, your life changes fundamentally. I'm not really sure how many of you are actually married, but it makes a huge difference. I started my education in Jordan, my home country, and I graduated from the University of Jordan with a bachelor's in electrical engineering in 2003. I did my master's in Ohio State in the US 2006, and then my PhD in 2013. It was kind of intermittent educational journey because in between, I actually went for jobs. I had 4 different jobs at 4 different companies in different locations in the world, including Siemens and Emerson. And as you can see over here, I've kind of plotted the red dots, or put red dots on places where I have actually lived. So it's been a rewarding journey to live abroad, to study abroad, and to work abroad. I've lived in probably 6 or 7 different locations in different continents. So that is really kind of a background of where I come from. I've also visited so many countries, and I think that has also helped shape my personality and my perception of technology and startups and entrepreneurship in general. So let me tell you a little bit about my startup. Nothing really promotional, but just to put things into context. It's called Insyab, and Insyab really is an Arabic word that means seamless flow, and it kind of captures what the mission of Insyab is all about, which is to provide or to allow data to flow seamlessly in systems. So think of it as really as of a definition as broad as that: seamless flow of data and information. We kicked off our effort to start Insyab back in the labs in 2013. The so-called stealth mode, kind of. So we spent quite a bit in the lab developing the technology, and then started real officially in 2015. And we ended up really developing connectivity and mobility planning solutions for industrial automation with pretty much or hardcore focus on the oil and gas industry, specifically the so-called geophysical exploration industry. So that's what Insyab is all about. It's been a 7-year journey so far for me. And that's what I really want to speak to you about today, my journey building Insyab. Why, how, and the what of that journey. Anyway, I mean, I think it's been a rewarding journey. We've had some good traction, some good track record, and with customers in the US, EU, and the Middle East. So it's worthwhile, really, probably at this stage, to take a pause and speak to an audience like you about that journey. So the way I do it, I don't really see the audience, but I really hope that I will be able kind of to provoke your thoughts with 3 brain teasers. I really want to provoke your thoughts and tease your brains with 3 plots. And let me start with this one. It's, as you can see, it's a plot, but I'll give you a moment to pause and think what this plot is all about. It's a plot of something, let me give you a hint, for something over time. And since I can't really see you, I hope that kind of triggered some thoughts into your mind, and let me bust what this is all about. This is really kind of a approximate time plot of my personal income over time, normalized to my first paycheck, which I received back in late 2002. So it's pretty interesting, and I think this is something as college students or university students, you have to be aware of it. Personal income is not really a given. It's something that you work for, and it is very likely to go over multiple phases and stages. But the strange thing, when I had an 8-to-5 job, it continued to grow nicely. Like every time I got a raise or I changed jobs, or even I went to the US, I had like a research assistantship, and it paid really well at that time. So my personal income normalized was on a growth trajectory. And then, as you can tell, it dropped significantly because I really wanted to build that startup, and there was no real income other than like sporadic projects here and there. And we spent a couple of years in that mode. And then the startup sprung into life, and as you can see, it went really, really up. I was really happy. I thought like we went over the clouds even when it comes to income. But that's in startup life. You don't really, as a founder, you're not really getting paid a paycheck at the end. You really depend on the income generated by the company, and that's really very much dependent on the market forces and driven by the dynamics of the market. So it's kind of bumpy. And then, as you can tell, this year was not really an easy one. I just talked to Mukul and his colleagues about the layoffs. We had to take some tough decisions. We kind of kept our team. We kept our team. We did not really lay people off, but at the expense of personal income to the founders as well as the team. So that's what this steep fall is all about. So that's the first brain teaser. I really wanted you to think about what startup is and is not about. It's sometimes you have to make sure you understand really what you want to do with a startup. If it's income, then you have to be cautious about that. Okay, and we'll speak about that later on. This is the second brain teaser, and again, I would pause for 15 to 30 seconds for you to think about what this is all about. So you have 3 buckets or 3 categories. One is dominant, and one is quite small, even probably smaller than 1%, and one like also small but bigger than the first bucket. So think about this in the startup context. And here you go. I think I have to go back to the actual article. It was a Harvard Business Review or Stanford Business School article, more or less saying that 95% of startups actually fail, and 4% of those startups eventually manage to continue, but with just a moderate growth that is not really attractive enough for investors, and only 1% make a big success and potentially become or might become a potential unicorn project, like the big tech companies. So that's really another food for thought for you guys and for everyone. Um, the failure rate is high, but here's the catch. Many of those 5%, the 1% big successes and the 4% moderate growth, actually spent some time, maybe more than one time, in this big bucket, the failure, including me. I actually spent some time, I dwelled some time in this failure bucket before I think I went to this bucket, which is, acceptable growth startup. So startup life is not really is about really hard work and giving it your best and not really losing hope from the first attempt. And I also will speak about this later on. And here's your third brain teaser. That's something I made up, but it's really based on some qualitative research that I've read in an article recently. Again, for 5 to 10 seconds, think about this. What would this be? It's a plot over time. Again, there's time, so the x-axis is time. But what do you think this would be? Excuse me. I learned this the hard way. The hard way. It took me some time to capture this kind of skill. You start with a certain vision of what the product is all about, but that is really far away from what a viable product is. The viable product is that product shape and form factor which a customer is willing to pay for. So you start far off. You start with a nice idea. You think you're gonna change the world with that idea, but as you spend more time talking to potential clients and potential users, you start refining that product idea, and it starts getting closer to what people are willing to pay for, and somehow farther from your original thoughts, which is really what customer interaction is all about. It's all about you interacting and trying to refine your thoughts and product development plans. So, a legitimate question after those 3 brain teasers, the failure rate, the fact that your income is very likely to fall or be subject to fluctuations or market forces, and the fact that you have to spend so much time to refine your idea, which might end up being very different than what the product is. With those 3 facts that we have just established, why do you actually do a startup? Why did I make a startup? Why did others build startups? And it's really, this is the crux of the talk. I'm kind of taking you all the way to the end, but just in the beginning. Here's what here were the facts. It's not an easy ride. There's a sizable chance of failure, as I said. It takes a lot of hard work, and you have to sacrifice a bit. So why do you do it? Here comes the why. I think it's about having a sense of purposefulness, doing something that has a purpose that is useful. That is one of the biggest driving forces. There was a startup founders survey. Again, I can try to scratch my head to think where I've read that, but the dominant majority of startup founders said that they are doing this not for the sake of being rich, but for the sake of doing something purposeful and change the world. That's the biggest reason why they do it. The second one is passion to build. We're all passionate to build stuff. We build robots, we play with them, we build stuff, we play with them, we build systems, we write software. Building a startup is actually about the passion to build something. It's really a reflection or a way for you to bring that childish enthusiasm and passion into your professional life. So startup founders are always passionate about building new stuff. And if you're one, you're going to really make a good startup founder. And a good startup founder or someone, or I always encourage people who see themselves as problem solvers to go build startups. People who are actually just doers rather than makers, people who just continue to do the status quo. are probably not the best startup founders, but they are. But if they enjoy solving problems, regardless, like social, technical, engineering, you might be, doing an engineering degree, but you have that, you know, solution or interesting solution for a social problem, for a poverty problem, for a healthcare problem. So if you're that problem solver person, then you're probably a good raw material for startup founder. And that's really the why. That's really why we actually do it. So let me tell you about my journey. Since I've laid down, established the facts, told you about why I do it, why other people do it, let me tell you about my startup journey. There was a first attempt, which was unfortunately a miserable failure. I was just 26 years old. I just was fresh back from the US, and I had this idea about a great wireless technology, great. I underlined this great wireless technology. So that's a classical mistake. Having an idea about a great technology is not really a magical recipe for a good startup, because very often it might mean that you are putting the wagon before the horse. The technology that I had in mind, it was solid, by the way. It was a very solid technology. It ended up being patented, and it generated probably around 8 patents. But there was no solid use case. There was no solid use case for that technology. And luckily, that was like me, 26 years old, when I was 26 years old, 14 years before. So I was trying to go around and promote the technology, but there was the immediate response. There was no solid use case for it. So I decided to fail fast, and luckily I failed, and I opted out of that startup project with contained financial damage. That was the best thing. I did not really lose much money. So let me tell you about my second attempt. After I finished my first startup attempt, I think I learned from some of my mistakes, at least some of my mistakes. I went for a job, started interacting with industry. I was one of the first few people actually building something called WiMAX networks. That was the precursor of 4G LTE. There was something called WiMAX, and I actually helped build the first two WiMAX networks. I was interacting with Alcatel, Motorola, Huawei, the biggest names at that time. Huawei is still a big name. But at the same time, I continued to be passionate about technology, so I wanted really to push the envelope of how much technology I can understand, I can grasp, I can grapple with, and so on. So I actually went for a PhD in France after that WiMAX network building venture, and I ended up really refining my skill sets and starting to understand how technology can be best put into use. And then I went again for a job in Emerson in Dubai, and the aha moment actually came while I was working for Emerson, an American company in Dubai. I came across a notoriously painful problem that was not solved at the time I was looking at it. And here you go. The problem that we helped solve was in the domain of the so-called onshore geophysical exploration operations. Let me break this down. Onshore means land, nothing marine. It's all desert or land or even foothills. It can be even icy terrains, but it's all land. Geophysical exploration is the science and technology and engineering of actually deploying seismic sensors and using those sensors to image or collect images of the sub-earth. It's like baby sonar, but for the earth. So with those images of the sub-earth, oil companies end up having a very good estimate where oil and gas is trapped. So the way they do that, actually they deploy thousands, tens of thousands of sensors. Nowadays, it's very typical to see 100,000 sensors, but the catch is, they're all wired. Imagine 100,000 sensors in the field, all being wired like this. As you see, you have so much wires going around. thousands of kilometers of cable runs. There was no wireless technology up until 2013, 13, 14. There were some attempts, but they all failed. Until we came into the picture, there was no wireless technology out there in the market that could handle that many sensors wirelessly. Imagine. Not only that, the geophysical exploration operations also entail the use of tens of vehicles of various sizes, like big vehicles like this, vehicles, rovers, bulldozers, you name it, like tens of vehicles in the operation. So hundreds of crew members. So from an operational perspective, if you've ever come across OR research, operation research, courses, this is really, and then you have a wide range to wide area to sweep. This is really a resource-intense operation. Lots of moving parts, so many sensors, so many cables, so many crew members, so many vehicles. It's quite tough. So when I came across this problem, I said, you know what? We can do something about that. We are technologists. We know how to deal with sensors. We know how to do software. So I thought we can build a strategy. Excuse me. We can build a strategy to address and tackle that problem, and we can actually take it one step at a time. The first step was really to get rid of cables. Was really to build wireless connectivity technology that can help those sensors, do their things, measure the size, do their sensing job, and then send the data wirelessly back to be processed somewhere else. So we started building the wireless connectivity. And then after we proved ourselves, after we started acquiring customers, we actually moved to the second stage, which is mobility management. You have so many sensors which you want to continuously pick up and lay down somewhere else. You have so many vehicles, you have so many crew members. How do you actually plan the best path and the best sequence of events given all of those assets? So we started tackling the mobility management and the operations research aspect of things. And then, as you may expect, we have so much data, we have so much sensors, we have so much, tasks, locations, positions, and then what do you do with that? Obviously, that's big data, and you can always harness the value proposition of big data and data analytics to refine your decision-making process. So that's the strategy that we put forth, and that's what we really ended up doing. We started building. Also, first of all, before building, I still do that mistake. Before actually building, we started engaging with stakeholders. We started talking to oil companies, to service providers, Schlumberger, Halliburton, Total, Aramco, and the likes. And that started really in 2013. And we got some traction, and with that traction, we exploited that traction to, excuse me, receive, or let's say secure a grant to build a proof of concept in 2014. And we had something up and running, and we were lucky enough to have our first potential customer fly all the way from Houston to attend a demo in the field in 2015, and we started getting into business in 2016. And then, the ball started rolling, and we started signing up customers in some of the oil, some of the oil and gas majors are actually now our customers. They're licensing our software, connectivity software, analytics solutions, and mobility planning solutions. And so that was really the journey of Insyab so far, building a solution and then selling it to customers. I think I promised you to speak for 25 minutes or 30 minutes, and that's really taking me to the concluding part of my talk before we open to questions. So let me conclude with this. With respect to building startups and the journey of startup founders. Let me share with you some of the lessons learned, really. It might not be very apparent. Someone like me might come up and say, speak about the pains of building products, about, give some lessons learned, some advice, but I've seen so many talks like this. Unless the founders really explicitly mention it, it falls into the cracks. We always have to make sure I always want make sure that I make that the following message comes across: the team is your most valuable asset. We might all fail together, so that's you have. But success can only be done with a team around you. Make sure that you're surrounded with the not necessarily the smartest team in terms of skills, but the most passionate team, the team that really understands your goal and aligns with your goals as founders. So that's the second thing I would probably emphasize today. Make sure your team really is very well aligned with you. Otherwise, they are not really giving you your best. And by the way, in startup life, your team members will very often get offers to join other jobs or other companies for a higher salary. There are some people who might leave you, but those who are really into it for the passion and for the potential of big success, they will stick with you, even though they will not be paid their market value. The other thing I really want to emphasize again, over and over again, before you get your hands too dirty building something, make sure that there's a customer out there who's really willing to pay for it. Be bold. Go and knock on the doors of potential customers. You might be brushed off because you have nothing to show them, but some of them will be willing to give you that feedback, honest, frank feedback, whether this makes sense or not. And as you collect feedback, you start building the product until you come up with something viable enough to demonstrate to them, to showcase them. They might be your first pilot users, test users. But make sure you continuously and iteratively feed your product development engine or efforts with some customer feedback. And then the last message, which really captures and summarizes my experience building a startup and really relates to the title of this talk. From stamp clicking to board meetings, really, literally, your dynamic range, you should expect your dynamic range to be as wide as dusting the desks in the morning, all the way to spending some sales time, face time with VPs of big companies. As a startup founder, you have to expect that. You're going to be that person who's writing software in the morning, debugging software in the morning, probably, and then at the end of the day, actually going through the finances or meeting with potential customers or presenting in front of a big audience in a conference. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of building stuff. Really being intimately engaged in the intricate details of things. So that's probably my last comment I would make today. No, actually, it's the one before the last. When you start up a company, when you start up your own startup, you have one of two paths. You're either treading somehow uncharted waters because you're building a new product, you're offering something new that does not exist or exist in a new novel way that people have not offered before. So that's uncharted water. So you have to be ready for mistakes, for failures, for falls, and for stand-ups and so on. Or you might actually be treading a very crowded pathway. And if that's the case, if you figure out that this is a very crowded pathway, then be ready for fierce competition, or be ready for the conclusion that, you know what, that's probably not the best idea I should go to the market with. Maybe I should search for something more novel, more meaningful, and more disruptive. And I'd like to conclude my talk with a very nice statement that I remember reading in IEEE Spectrum. It's an IEEE actually publication, and they had an interview with someone called Sebastian Thrun. That he used to be the boss of Google X Labs, and I remember him saying that they at Google X Labs, they try their best to kill new ideas. So they meet and they try their best to kill any new idea. Those which they could not kill end up being the best ones and the really good ones that really they end up taking to the market. Like Waymo, the self-driving car, was one of those ideas. So I think that's a good advice. Make sure that you research really well what you're trying to go to the market with. Make sure that you have a differentiation, a tangible value proposition, and customers who are willing to pay for your product. And then once you have that, build the team and go for it. If you fail, don't worry, you can do it twice, 3 times, 4 times until you reach your goals. And I'd like to conclude by that. I hope you enjoyed my talk. I hope you found something interesting, and I'm very much willing to open the floor for questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, sir. You provided quite a realistic but very passionate portrayal of the entrepreneurship as a way of life. Sir, building on this talk of yours, which was obviously superb, I here's a question from my side. So, do you think public speaking and the in general convincing people are these skills which can be cultivated, or are these inherent abilities?
Ah, so so public speaking. The question is about public speaking and the ability and aptitude to speak to large audiences and convey your messages across, right?
Yes, sir, because that's a necessary skill for an entrepreneur. And
Well, that's a good one. I have to personally confess, I was really bad at making presentations. I still have, by the way, this stage fright. So whenever I go up on the stage in front of an audience, I feel my like butterflies in my stomach. Imagine, still I've done so many presentations, but I still have that. I think audiences are smart. So there are people who make good shows. They're like they can go into in front of an audience and be captive and capture the audience's interest with their. But you know what? When it comes to startups, it's about logical thought process and passion. As long as you speak good English, or you speak slowly enough for people to understand what you're proposing, there's always compelling logic. If you believe in what you do, if you see that compelling logic, you will always be able to transfer it to the audience, and then you can start building your skill set in terms of speaking speaking to the audience, the representation skills, the thought process. You can refine that with time and with training, by the way.
okay, okay. So let's open the platform to questions from the audience.
Sure.
Right. So the first question that we have, so is it okay if I read the question out loud?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Sure. The first question that we have is from Radni. Good evening, sir. In your experience of entrepreneurship, what is more important? Is it flourishing or surviving through with it?
Well, you won't flourish until you go through a painful survival process. um, so I think if you continue to feel that you're in survival mode and you're struggling and you don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel, you have to take a pause and go through the basic questions again. Am I really offering something meaningful? Is there a customer willing to pay it? Are there hurdles, meaningful hurdles that I can actually combat or overcome to come up with a product? If you don't have clear and solid answers like yes, 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 yes for those questions, you might want to just let go. Don't be too sentimental about it. But it's just about hard work. If you think more hard work will help you survive through the hardships of the early startup mode, then continue to go for it, because you will flourish. Your passion and your team's passion will help you survive and flourish. By the way, what is flourish? Is it really a $1 billion unicorn startup? Maybe not. Define your goals. Do you have investors whom you have meet to make happy? If that, make sure you understand what flourish is. Is it income? Is it billionaire, being a billionaire? Is it really making meaningful impact in industry you are passionate about? Once you set that goal, once you define that goal, just go for it. As long as you have the tools to succeed. Does that
Right.
make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir. Totally. All right. The next question that we have is from Pranav Gag. How do you market your business and which tactics have been most successful?
Yeah, that depends a lot on which business segment you are in. Is it like business to business, business to consumer? I've never been in a B2C, like the business to consumer kind of segment, so I can't really speak much to that. They have their own marketing tools, digital marketing, advertisement, consumer electronics shows, and so on. If you're in the consumer electronics space, but I cannot speak much to that because don't have much experience. But when it comes B2B, I think the best in my experience, the best marketing tool have been direct sales, direct marketing, like actually raising the phone or trying to use my network of contacts to reach a potential customer. Once you actually win that customer and you make them happy, we've seen customers come through word of mouth from happy customers. B2B marketing and sales is easier than I thought, in the sense that once you really make customers happy, they actually volunteer to become your own marketing agents by telling others who have been going through the same pain that, yeah, we've been dealing with this company and they have this solution, unless they're competitors of it, obviously. If they're competitors, they won't really help you. But if they're not, your own customers might become advocates of your solutions. Going to exhibitions, being bold and going to exhibitions, taking up booths in exhibitions, showcasing your solution. These have been the most viable and effective marketing and sales tools that we have used.
So it's more about gaining trust of the customers.
I think so. I think so. I mean, and it's about actually continuously reaching out to customers, trying to show them the value of what you're doing. So don't be afraid to just raise the phone and just call someone. By the way, our customers are primarily outside the region. So most of our revenue, over the past 5 years, came from the US. So we actually spent quite some time flying to the US, going on quarterly basis to customers, trying to meet them, presenting to them in their own premises what we can do. So take the risk.
Yeah. Right. The next question that we have is from Sham Krishna Menon. What is your greatest fear and how do you manage your fear?
Yeah, so we haven't really grown to a stage where we have enough, cushion financial or enough cash um, to grow crazily. We're growing at a very moderate rate. We're not really a unicorn startup, as I said. We're in that 4% moderate growth kind of startup. So my biggest fear is always, something like COVID-19 was my biggest fear and turned out to be my biggest fear. A macro level kind of macroeconomic, macro societal, macro geopolitical kind of event was something I feared a lot, and it happened. And the only way we managed to survive through that was to take a big hit in terms of our personal income levels or personal income. So that was my biggest fear, and we managed to take the company to navigate the company through that calamity. We have to plan for that again. I think we need to plan ahead. We need to raise more funding. We need to align ourselves with venture capital in a better way so that we can survive and sustain macro level events in the future.
Right. So, but you did survive it. So I think that's really admirable that you actually faced your fear.
How somehow, I mean, we've taken a big hit, honestly speaking, especially as founders. But I hope 2021 we would be better.
Yes, I'm sure we all do hope that
Sure,
2021 will be better.
sure, sure.
Right. The next question that we have on the screen is from Utkarsh Naik. In these difficult times, are investors and venture capitalists still willing to take risks to fund startups?
Well, these are all good questions, by the way. I'm not really sure if you guys have thought about that before the talk, or I provoked you to think about them during the talk. Both ways, it's really good. Um, so venture capitalists come with different, shapes, tastes, colors, and flavors. Um, in my own region, they do not really understand or appreciate a lot deep tech. So stuff that has to do with hardware, like drones, oscilloscopes, like this one. They don't appreciate that stuff, and they don't really understand it a lot. So they end up investing a lot in e-commerce. Okay,
Okay.
but in a place like India, I think you have a wider range, wider spectrum of VCs whom you can approach actually. What the question? Can you repeat the question again, please, Mukul?
Sure. So, yeah. In these difficult times, are investors and venture capitalists still
Yes.
willing
Okay.
to take risks?
So smart VCs nowadays, they see the value of e-commerce. Actually, they're flocking into e-commerce, ed tech, telemedicine. So those who were properly positioned in the start of the crisis, they actually ended up receiving a good amount of money to continue to grow their products. Uh, if you are in a deep tech like robotics, kind of not AI, robotics control systems, automation systems, then it depends on the geography. In our region, it has been difficult. In a place like the US and Europe, I've seen lots of startups in the automation and industrial automation, robotics space actually receiving funding. In India, I've seen like the VC ecosystem really thriving and actually maturing exponentially. So I think it's all about how you position yourself and how you try to ride the wave.
Well said, sir. So the next question on the screen is from Simran Chaudhary. Do you believe there is some sort of pattern or formula to becoming a successful entrepreneur?
Yes and no. It's You see lots of textbooks about entrepreneurship, about startups. There's a book. I think I have a book over here from the MIT guy, Bill Ole. It's the first book over there in my. It's like I tend to read it somehow. He tries to describe entrepreneurship and startup founding as an engineering kind of task. Like you have to go through specific steps. But you know what? These textbooks are very often biased by the ecosystem from which the writer hails from. Like the US is different than India, is different than Taiwan, Hong Kong, Dubai, and so on. There are some generic rules, but when it comes to specifics, you have to follow your guts and actually take advice from those who have treaded that path before you. There are some rules of thumb, as I mentioned: team, understanding the customer, making sure that you understand what the product is, making sure that there is the customer who's willing to pay, not really getting your hands dirty before you interact with the market. Be passionate about it. Engage your team with your vision. These are really the rules of thumb that all successful startups or founders have to follow. Otherwise, it's your own journey. You have to shape your future.
So, as a follow up to this question, I'd like to ask did you have a mentor in your journey?
Yes, I did. I had two actually. So I had, although our website is quite old, it's like 3 years old, but there are two guys shown on our website. One was the VP in Alcatel-Lucent, a company acquired by Nokia later on. He spent some time developing business in the wireless and the telecommunication business in Europe. And the other one was actually and spent some time in Silicon Valley for 20 years. And they were instrumental in the very beginning to help me shape, my vision, the form of the product. But they don't really spend, I think I missed the opportunity of having a day-to-day mentor.
Oh,
Um, but maybe I did not always need that because I had some practical professional experience before I started the company. For those who come fresh out of school and want to do their startup, I would say that they need like day-to-day mentors helping them with fundamental sales, marketing, and finance skills.
okay. Okay,
There was
that's
a
some.
question coming up. Yes. Okay.
Right. So the next question is from Sham Krishna. What is your favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. The favorite aspect is actually it's more moral in the sense that we had some like good paychecks sometimes coming in. We had some good successes. We saw the product working, but the best aspect was when one of our customers actually volunteered before he was the CEO of the company of one of our clients, our company client companies, and he was just going to move on to another venture. So before he left his post, he actually volunteered to write us a recommendation, a reference letter that this company from Dubai built that product and we liked it a lot and we felt that they were up to expect actually beyond expectation and they exercised customer empathy. So to me, him volunteering to write that reference letter without me actually asking for it was, I think, one of the peak moments in my career, not even my startup.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The next question that we have is what business related book has inspired you the most, or what is your favorite book?
Well, don't take me wrong for it. There was a famous article from Stanford lady, I guess, or Harvard lady. It was called, and excuse me for the language, but this I think it was called entrepreneurship porno.
Okay.
You can Google it. It was like the peak of the hype of startups, 2015, and the article was actually trying to distinguish and decouple the hype from the true stuff. So don't be fooled by the hype. Make sure you continue, to exercise common sense. That was really the morale of that article. Exercise common sense. Continue to ask people who have done mistakes or failed or succeeded. Don't be shy about actually asking for advice, and so that you don't really fall into the hype, but rather end up really building a meaningful startup. So I can come up with that. You can Google it. It was startup porno hype. So those were the three keywords. But again, I apologize for that using such terminology. But it was a really nice article.
Okay. Sir, and like, would you say the young entrepreneurs are usually, more hot-headed or, more rushing than, let's say, someone who starts his own business at 30 or 40 or in the middle age?
That's a very good point. So right, 23, 24, you have so much passion and energy and out of the box thinking skills. You're not shaped in a certain format, so you like fresh minds, passion, hard work. You can do 25, 26 hours per day somehow. So you have that formula for actually building stuff and turning around, like the turnaround time for building something and testing it in the market is there.
Right.
And you can always complement that with financial auditing, marketing, sales skills from those who are more experienced from it. Like, how do I do this? How do I go about marketing my consumer electronics tag or whatever? You ask people who have done that before.
Okay.
But then, if you don't ask people, if you don't really surround yourself with good mentors, you will do mistakes in raising funding, in approaching VCs, and doing good marketing, building a viable business model. So if you don't really surround yourself with mentors, you will fail there. So
Yeah.
passion with mentorship. People my age are, I was like, I did some horrible mistakes because I was very rigorously shaped. Like, this is how it should be done. I was not really thinking out of the box. I was rigid somehow. So it took me quite a bit of time, like a few months, to flush some stereotypical thoughts about how things can be done and start fresh. But what really helped me is like spending some time in international corporations, understanding how finance is done, accounting, marketing, sales. So I kind of I was able to go forward without that day-to-day mentorship.
Right. Right. Get it. Okay. The next question that we have is, what would you say are the top three skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, passion, teamwork, excuse me, passion, teamwork, and then um, top three: passion, teamwork, and then I would say the third one is faith. So it's faith in your own capabilities. So
That's
faith,
a good.
because if you don't have faith, I mean, if you don't have passion, you will not be able to wake up in the morning. And if you don't have faith of what you're doing, then it's like it's very difficult. And teamwork. I can never underestimate the importance of teamwork, the spirit, team spirit.
Right. Right. The next question that we have is, what has been your most satisfying moment in business?
I think that question kind of came up a few minutes ago.
Right.
Again, if I want to mention my second most satisfactory career moment, other than that, reference letter, I think it was when I was with Emerson, I used to sell products that were built in the US. We used to test them, refine them. Like, it was a big team scattered all over the world, so everyone had his own bit. But building a product and testing in the field with just three, software developers and just one hardware developer, uh, in a garage-like kind of setup, testing it and actually making it work to the extent that someone flew all the way from the US to attend that demo. That was a big relief.
Amazing.
Have you heard of Qualcomm, by the way? Qualcomm, the big chipset maker.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Actually,
Yes.
Qualcomm in 1989, the guy, his name is, the founder of Qualcomm. There was a big audience. There were like news outlets. There were cameras. Everyone. And and 5 minutes, or actually 2 minutes into the start of the event, one of his technical team in the back, of the stage, or the back behind the audience, was telling him that, like, it's not working. So his base station, his solution failed at the time of the event. Imagine that. But then they managed to actually make it work after 30 minutes. So he continued to talk and engage the audience in meaningless kind of question Q&A until they made it work again. So having a demo work in front of a customer or an audience is really nice.
Yes, sir. Sir, I've actually read somewhere that Steve Jobs, when he was unveiling the first iPhone, um, the the phone actually kept crashing in live demo, and yet he actually walked through it, and he convinced everyone to that about his product. So
Yeah, but that's Steve
that's
Jobs. If I were in his shoes, I would probably like started sweating and left the stage. But that's Steve Jobs.
right, right.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question that we have is an interesting one. What entrepreneurial tricks have you discovered to keep you focused and productive in your day-to-day busy schedule?
Okay. Well, I think I've developed that before starting my own company. Um, I don't really. I mean, I don't really. I try to shy away from daily routine. Contrary to expectation, I don't really try to come to office at 8 and leave at 5 or at 6 or at 7. I'm task oriented. Um, if I feel that I'm stuck somewhere, one of the best things I've been practicing is to seek advice from my team members, from my subordinates, like from software developers. Like, I'm trying to do this. What do you think? So asking for feedback from across, horizontally and vertically. When it comes to daily routines, I actually cherish family time. Contrary to expectation, I actually do allocate time for my family, for my hobbies. Don't I mean hard work is not really about slashing your hobbies and your personal life. No, it's not. Actually, I've personally experienced a stage in my career life where I was putting 70 hours per week, which is probably, in our culture, it's too much. In Chinese slash Korean slash probably East Asian culture, it's probably okay. But for our culture, Middle Eastern culture, it's a lot. But still, I was able to balance that with good family life, good amount of time spending time with my children and my family. So make sure that you strike a good balance.
Right. So actually, I'm actually reading Lee Iacocca's autobiography right now, and
No,
he has the same thing to say, that make time for your family. And actually, there's a myth that the higher level executives don't get time to do other fun stuff, but it's actually not true. Like, that's what he says, that actually the higher executives, they have the time and flexibility to make time for other stuff, make time for family. So I think that's
yes,
really important.
yes, I agree. I agree.
Okay. Right. The next question that we have on screen is, do you think the amount of people becoming entrepreneurs is forming some kind of a bubble or epidemic in the market, or is it really necessary?
So, I mean, double check that article I told you about. I again can't remember the title of that article. It was really speaking about the hype and how so many people are misled into becoming entrepreneurs before thinking out rigorously and deeply what they want to do. So it did create uh, a bubble. Yeah, that's the right way to do it. A bubble of entrepreneurs and startups and so on. Um, but I think people are becoming more aware and conscious about what startups are all about. Events like this, but like the one you're trying to do, is really putting, connecting the dots and putting things into context. I would not expect an event like this to cause less entrepreneurs to jump into the wagon and build their own companies. Actually, the contrary. I would expect more people, but the quality of people, in the sense that, not the quality,
Okay.
uh, the type of people, the category of people. Not everyone is startup founder. Some people do very good employees. Like, they will become the best VPs in a management consulting company. That's fine.
Right.
We need those, but it's. I think the entrepreneurship bubble will not shrink. It will probably continue to grow. The sphere, let's call it sphere, but with people who are better talented at being entrepreneurs. And it's good because it increases the level of innovation, it increases the level of meaningful competition, and it's eventually going to contribute positively to the economy. And by the
Right.
way, I mean, I always tell people, I mean, people your age, if you spend 2 years, 3 years building a failed startup, that's really good because it's like free MBA. You built something that people really wanted and paid for, but there were some other challenges that did not help you grow. So you decided to just step off the wagon. No, you learned how to program, how to make business case canvas, how to approach customers, do some sales, like all what you really dream for a 25, 26 year old employee. Like, I would opt, dream for someone like that. Not today. Today we're not hiring because of the COVID-19. But really, entrepreneurship teaches you a lot.
Right. Okay. So the next question that we have on screen, any life hacks for all the aspiring entrepreneurs?
Uh, These are tough questions, to be honest. I was not expecting questions like those. Uh, well, how do you define a life hack? Like, everyone has, everyone is a unique person. Everyone is a unique person, and my personal life hack was to again to strike that balance between what I want to achieve in my personal life, my academic, my research life, my career life. So let me make it, life hacks. First of all, for me, like I changed my dress code. I stopped wearing suits. So I learned a new sport. Like every 2 years, I try to learn a new sport. Like I started learning tennis when I was 37, 38 years old. I never thought of myself someone learning tennis. I started snorkeling. Like start something new. Make sure that you indulge yourself with something affordable but enjoyable.
Right. That's pretty useful. The next question that we have: how has being an entrepreneur affected your family life?
Um, so I have a young daughter. So she was okay. I'll answer it the following way, and then you can tell. My she was four. My youngest daughter was 4 or 5 years old at the time, like 2 or 3 years ago. And someone was asking her, "What does your father do for life?" And she said he was an engineer. Then he was dad, like his job was dad, and today he is a general manager of a company.
Oh,
So that tells you that they're really engaged. Like we actually sometimes discuss my projects and the technologies that I try to understand or learn on the dining table, and then they come back asking me about their math questions or like environmental, whatever science question or swimming class. So that's how it affected. Actually, it got me engaged more meaningfully with my family members sometimes. Imagine.
right, right. And I assume that that actually even what we can say increases productivity in the professional life too. Since you are satisfied in one part of your
Yes.
life.
Yes.
Right. That's true. Okay. The next
Actually,
question.
this life work balance advice was given to me by someone called by an Indian senior colleague of mine in Abu Dhabi. His name was Nikhil, I guess. I forgot his name to be honest, but I will always remember him for that specific advice. He told me, Ahmed, you're 10 years younger than me. You have to strike that balance. Otherwise, you won't sustain your career life. Anyway, there was a good question coming up after that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the guy asks, how do you manage time for both work and personal life? Please give us some tips.
So there are studies about how much people spend on social apps, on social media, right, per day, and on TV, right? I spend zero.
All right.
I do watch TV like 30 minutes of you, not 15 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes evenings on YouTube watching like the news, and that's it. No Facebook, no Twitter. I do have LinkedIn, obviously, and I spend very little time on WhatsApp. You have to sacrifice. Like if you spend 2 hours per day on social media, unless your job is sales and marketing, or sorry, marketing or digital media, that's fine. But you have to make your choice. I have limited amount of time. What do I want to sacrifice? And in my case, like it was social media. Or
That's
sometimes just hanging out with guys for just going out for coffee. That's nice, but that takes a hit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that was our last question. So before we proceed towards a wrap up, so do you want to give any parting advice to our audience? Mm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for the very good questions. It kind of reflects maturity at your end. When I was your age, we did not really have that kind of interaction or exposure to entrepreneurship, or um, the life of building companies and professional life in business. So I would advise you to continue to read, to continue to engage in such webinars. I would always also advise you to seek, advice from those who have, been there before you, right? Keep reading, continue to, to explore different areas in technology and engineering, as well as, in general. One thing that sometimes we fail to do is we focus so much on our specialty, but we fail to spend time reading in other specialties or trying to understand the big picture. If you manage somehow to understand the big picture, so it becomes easier for you to understand or get better understanding of your own domain. I hope that helps.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to just make a small announcement that in the chat box, we have put out the feedback form. Audience, please fill it and give us your, your insights into this and how we can improve ourselves. Right. So, heading towards the wrap up, firstly, I'd like to profusely thank Ahmed sir for agreeing to come to our event and speaking for us. He's
Pleasure.
I've interacted with him personally, and he's a very down to earth person. He was the first one actually who agreed to come to us. He agreed right away. So that was a really a highlight for me. I know I've told you this before, but um, so right. So I'd like to also thank our college, our branch counselor, our dean sir, and our faculty mentors for guiding us throughout this event. I'd like to thank all the volunteers, those who are involved in this, right from our technical team, our documentation team, our events team, to our chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary. You guys have been behind our, you guys have been standing behind our backs firmly. So a big shout out to you guys. So once again, thank you all. Thank you to this wonderful audience today. And this is your host Mukul Aigalikar signing off. Thank you.